The audio is still going to be distorted for now. They're hacking my devices again. And I'm not going horizontal. So, what I will say is that I was planning to take tomorrow off anyway, and I will add this to my list of things to adjust. The angels let me know how to fix that, so I'll work on it. But I had some other things planned anyway, so we can do that now. The audio, whether it's my voice or like a true crime through here, it's still going to sound a bit distorted compared to how crisp it usually is when things are right. But it's not as bad as it could be, so we'll just vibe it out. I was planning to be here for about 2 hours tonight. Ish. So let's chill. Put the music on pause for a moment. And play that. There was a true crime that popped up on my feed earlier. I laughed so hard when I saw the title. I haven't checked it out yet, but we did go over this one piece by piece in parallel to some of the people doing like the hacking, the stalking, like the drive-by that happened earlier. All of that. They're all in the same group and mix. And Better Off Red, this is the YouTuber who put out this true crime. Hi, loves. She did it's like a 25-minute video almost on the Afroman true crime with the dirty cops. So we're going to go through it together. I love you guys. They will not keep us down. Can't surround a lion with a bunch of lazy sheep. The one thing about royalty is that we don't know defeat. So I put my middle fingers up. I'm done being your slave. My generation's had enough, and you should be afraid. Oh, I'm not your prisoner. Better listen when I say, put my middle finger up. I'm done being your slave. Bitch, not today. Never forever, Satan.
I am getting glitter all over my face.
That's fine, girl.
Hi guys, welcome back to
Better Off Red. Afroman.
To another episode of Crew Crime. Crew Crime. Crew Crime. Crew Crime. If you are new here, hi. My name is Sarah, and I'm an episode of Crew Crime. Crew Crime. Crew Crime.
Because I got high.
If you are new here, hi. My name is Sarah, and what I do here is tell you a terrible story to ruin your day and put on my makeup at the same time. So if that sounds like fun to you, you are in the right place. So make sure that you subscribe and turn on all the notifications so that you never miss one of my terrible stories. If you ever wore low-rise jeans, shopped exclusively from the Delia's catalog, or used Maybelline Dream Matte Mousse Foundation, then you know who Aquaman is. In 2000, 2001, before going viral was called going viral, Aquaman's Stoner anthem, Because I Got High, made its way onto every mix CD made from songs ripped off of Napster. Memories. Today's story is pretty much everywhere right now. Afroman was sued for defamation. Late night shows and comedians are all over it, but what I want to get into is the actual crime of it all. Now, in this story, there was a lot of shenanigans, and it's even wilder than you think. So, hold on to your butts. This is the story of Afroman. Well, before he was Afro.
Hold on to your butts. Is that what she said? I was talking about lemon pound cake.
Now, in this story, this is the story of Afroman. Well, before than you think. So, hold on to your butts. This is the story of Afroman. Well, before he was Afroman, he was born Joseph Edgar Foreman on July 28th, 1974.
Speaking of, I want some lemon cake tea. That's my favorite.
As a child, he was very musical. He played the drums
Glazed
and
lemon cake
guitar
tea.
in the church band. He grew up in South Central LA, and then he later moved out to Palm Desert. And by the time he reached his teen years, he knew that music was his calling. He began making his own music, writing lyrics and mixing beats and making mixtapes that he would sell at school. Now, Joseph has always drawn inspiration from, things in his own life. Like one of his earliest songs was written about a teacher that kicked him out of school for sagging his pants. Joseph actually became Afroman after being teased by a girl because of his hairstyle. He was wearing.
Hey, I've got a story for you too. You see, he wanted to cut him a slice. You mean the cop? The cop wanted a slice of lemon pound cake from Afroman's house? Yes. Yes, he did. But let me tell you what. Remember, I think it was last night I told you that, or the night before, like, I'm a delight to have around. People move in, I bake cookies for them. Just like the witch next door who tried to, I told you last night. She tried to come for my cat. Her cat died. She tried to stir the pot with my mother. Her mother died. It was a succession of things. And there were more. But at one point, I baked cookies and stuff and sent them over. But then she started being a witch. So I stopped doing that. But I did make them pretty consistently for the construction workers that were rebuilding the house next door on the property. And I would set up a table and wipe up down a table, bleach down a table, and set up like a little station. I'd make tea or juice or something like that, and cookies, or often like croissant cookies, chocolate chip cookies, stuffed croissants, cookies, chocolate chip cookies. For them, and I'd leave them either that and like single serve chip cookies usually too, but I'd leave them on the table in like a lid, had a lid on it, Tupperware thing with a lid. Lift it off. Paper towels, clean cups, everything they needed. And I would bring it in at the end of the day when they were done. But one night I was so busy and I was tired, and it just got dark, and then I forgot that it was out there. So, not that it was a big deal. Everything was closed up and what have you. But I knew how many were out there. I knew how many were left. I could see it through the clear container before the sun went down. When I woke up in the morning to go pick it up, half of the stuff had been taken out in the middle of the night, meaning these crooked stalking fools came onto my property in the middle of the night to steal cookies that I've left over and forgot to pick up from the construction workers because they missed my dang baking so much. Crazy people. They're crazy!
His hair, long.
I hear you laughing. I know! That's funny as shit. It's real sketchy too, though. Yeah.
And afros were like not in style anymore. Now, he didn't exactly love that nickname.
Oh, also,
he didn't really want
the stalker who came by today. Yesterday, if you go through the comment thread of that section, right? Yesterday, I saw a post. It was another news article that popped up. or no, it was something, it was like the local YMCA was posting pictures of one of the cops who was involved in continuing to allow the stalking, refusing to handle the business, abide by their oath, protect and serve, right? They didn't do anything about what the criminals were doing. And the stalking, it went on sometimes multiple times a day, it has been for years. These people are mentally unwell. They told me if I could get photos of these people stalking me, they could do something about it. I did that, and then they did the narcissistic changing the goalpost thing. And they didn't do anything about it. I got many photos of them stalking me, and they didn't do anything about it. First, it was get photos and we can help you. Then it was sorry, we can't help you. What do you mean? Yes, you can. You just don't want to. That's a you problem. Okay, and so I commented when this post popped up on my feed yesterday on Facebook. I'm like, to the YMCA, I'm like, don't let these cops around kids. He was with a whole group of kids and they were surrounding him. I'm like, no. This particular cop, Elias Burns, told me he would stop the stalker that I just linked here. Here's again. From stalking like 3 years ago. He and his wife were doing it. They're the ones that I realized when I saw her in the grocery store a couple of months ago that they have kids. These people have been stalking me and targeting my child and I. They've got children of their own. You think they'd think twice about that. Before CPS comes knocking on their door. For those who don't know, that's like DCS or it's Child Protective Services in the state. That's what it's called. But whatever your equivalent is. Child welfare of some kind. Yeah, that's right. Damien. So I called it out. I'm like, don't let these cops around. I wouldn't let them around my kid if I saw a bear or these people in the woods. I'd choose the bear at this point. For good reason. At least you know the bear's trying to kill you and eat you. These people might be trying to kill you and eat you, but they also want to do other awful things too. And the bear doesn't want to do those things. At least you know what you're asking for and what kind of chance you stand. Yeah, how weird you gotta be to stalk someone like the fuck, right? Pardon my French, but goodness gracious. And so I called this out yesterday, and when I commented on the YMCA's post, the police were tagged in it, so they got the notification. And then today, that stalker started doing it again, and I don't believe that's a coincidence. It's not. I don't believe it for a second. They're crazy. That's why I often tag the FBI. It's a federal crime what they're doing. It's a violation of United States Penal Code 18-241, and that's a federal crime, an FBI issue. And the penalty for that is life in prison in the states that don't carry the death penalty or the death penalty that does. Why am I speaking on this? Because I know I'm not the only person who's been gang stalked. There's a case in France right now from the same. Some of these people are in a cult, the Freemason cult, and a bunch of them are being in the same cult, in the same group, the branch in France, are in big trouble right now for getting caught doing the same thing. So it's a problem. It's a problem. I also know that the dirty people are coming here to stalk and watch. We know what they're doing. So they're listening too.
22 people have gone on trial in France on charges of murder and other serious crimes,
Like stalking and
centered
hate
on
crimes.
members of a Masonic lodge accused of running hit squads. Those in the dock include 4 military personnel from France's Foreign Intelligence Service, 2 police officers, a retired domestic intelligence officer, a security guard, and 2 business executives. One victim, who survived 2 assassination attempts, explains the consequences of the attacks.
Trouble du stress post-traumatique.
She says post-traumatic stress disorder that I just haven't been able to get out of really.
Je n'arrive pas à sortir en fait depuis 6 ans, ça revient par épisode.
For the past 6 years. It comes back in episodes, she says.
Cancer.
And then she ended up getting, very possibly from the stress of things, cancer. Because when you are in such a high state and your body is dealing with that level of stress and injury, eventually, yes, it can cause inflammatory issues, autoimmune issues. The body starts shutting down on itself because it tries to attack all of the cortisol like it's a virus, because it's confused. It leaches into everything, all of your muscles and tissue. It leaches into everything. The cortisol just floods through your whole system. And in a short burst, that's good. It gets you like primal fight and flight mode. It gets you up and out of a dangerous situation, but you're not supposed to live in survival mode. There's a difference between surviving, which is trying not to die, and then thriving, which is living your best life. And even on the middle point in between, you're not supposed to live in survival mode. It's very bad for you. So eventually, yes, your body can shut down. And so if there's inflammation and cellular issues, that can cause something like this, if not treated and cared for. She said, and then being pushed out of my profession as well. So they targeted her job. She got sick from this. She's gotten PTSD. Terrible. But it's a very common thing. This is what they do. They target people for fun, for money. Some of my viewers say it costs nothing to be nice, right? It's free to be kind. And that's right. They're right. But these people make money off being evil. They gain status and clout or titles, superiority or ranking up in this cult hierarchy system by being nasty and grimy.
Profession également. Voilà, ça fait quand même la différence.
Most of the accused, aged between 30 and 73, have no previous criminal records. They are accused of murder, attempted murders, aggravated assault, and criminal conspiracy, all on behalf of a mafia network inside the former Athener Masonic Lodge in the Paris suburb.
So, that's that. That's a news. This is a European newscast. Put this out. Euro News. I'll link this actually. It's a good one. Yeah, I've been just ignoring him. Chilling, but he's gone now. It's fine. Love you guys. So, back on track.
Want to be known as Afroman, but all of his musical inspirations had stage names, right? Big Daddy Kane, Two Live Crew, Too Short, and it really made for great marketing. You know, just embrace a nickname. Let it work for you. You can put it on posters and t-shirts and, you know, whatever. Too Short became Too Short because when he would ask girls for their phone number, they would say he was too short.
Oh, no.
So he was like, okay. And he started putting Too Short on t-shirts and hats, and like that became his name. So Afroman was trying to figure out how he could make something like that.
That's short king behavior.
He realized that the word Afroman had 7 letters and the O is right in the middle. So like design-wise, it looked good. And he drew like an afro on top of the O, like a face, and he put it on hats and t-shirts, and it just worked. So essentially, the name chose him. In 1999, Afroman released his first album called Sell Your Dope. He played it mostly at house parties, and you know, he just wasn't really making any headway. He decided to leave California for Hattiesburg, Mississippi, because he had some family there. I think his dad was originally from there. You know, the entertainment business, especially the music industry, not super happening in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, but it did give him a chance to breathe, take a beat, figured things out. It's a little bit more affordable, you know, a little bit. Anyways, it was there when he wrote and recorded Because I Got High in 2000. He had partnered up with a local record company in Hattiesburg. Yes, there was a record company there somehow. It was called T-Bone Records, and it was founded by a local guy named Tim Rabinovsky, who liked different genres that don't normally go together, like
That's fun. Oh, that's funny.
jazz, metal. Anyway, Afroman recorded the song Because I Got High, and he had a bunch of CDs and tapes made, and he went to local shows, parties, whatever, and he would hand out copies of his music, you know, to promote it. And somebody who got one of those tapes or CDs or whatever uploaded it to Napster. You guys remember Napster, right? Mary. For the youngs, Napster was like bootleg iTunes. You could upload whatever you want. You could cruise the library, download whatever you want. You could share anything with anybody else who had a Napster account for free. It's for free. It's not super legal, but anyways, everybody was using Napster at the time, and that included the producers on the Howard Stern show. So Howard Stern, king of all media, got a hold of the song in 2001-ish, and he started playing the song on air for his audience of millions. The song blew up. This song was everywhere. So the song, if you've never heard it before, give it a listen. It's a delight. The song about smoking weed, right? And getting high, no one is lying. It's not glorifying anything, but it is silly and catchy as hell. The genius of the song is that it kind of plays both sides, right? Like it talks about getting in trouble, losing jobs, and all these terrible things happening because you got high. But then there's a lightness and a humor to it that, you know, weed smokers really dug. The song was so popular that it was nominated for a Grammy Award. It didn't win that year, but it did end up in a bunch of movies, including Jay and Silent Bob. That's pretty bad. Afroman made a record contract with Universal. He got a 6-album deal. Didn't make him a megastar or anything, and he actually parted ways with Universal about a year into that deal. So he created his own record label and continued releasing music on his own. His songs were very popular with his audience, who were very loyal, but the novelty definitely wore off, and things got quieter. Now, Afroman was a good time guy, and he had a very loyal fan base, as I said, but he wasn't out there making like Tupac-level social commentary. He was popular on the festival circuit, and the pot-smoking crowd loved him, of course. He was featured many times in High Times magazine, and he just kept making music and touring and selling merch, but just, you know, on a smaller scale as the years went on. In 2007, Afroman met a gal named Angie, and they fell in love. They got married in 2008, and this was his third marriage. They bought a farmhouse in Winchester, Ohio, which is about an hour east of Cincinnati, which is where Angie grew up. Now, the marriage was pretty short-lived. They divorced like a year later, but Afroman...
Reverse and stalk the gang? Yeah, well... I picked up a download as Divine Masculine was laughing earlier. And he was saying, I had to Google this, take the piss. He said, she's taking the piss out of the police. And I love it, he said, showing their competency. And he said, she clocked their shit so fast. I thought it was funny. I also, while it's right up here, I got a download earlier today about like a collective soul contract. I have a past life as a battle maiden. I was on the front line on the battlefield, and there were a lot of people. Who knows the story of Joan of Arc? Initially, she was mocked, she was ridiculed, she was called by the divine to lead the army. And people thought she was just some dumb peasant girl. She was just like a young 18-year-old girl. She didn't know what she was talking about. She was crazy. And they tried to be very dismissive of her, but she knew what God was pushing her, calling her to do. So she marched her behind. She left home, marched her behind all the way to the king and said, "Look, this is what's up." And eventually, they started listening to her to a degree, right? They would inform her of some of their battle plans and what have you, but they didn't want her on the battlefield. And she said, "No, God told me to go lead the army." And two things to note. In this era, it was, well, main thing here is, well, really two things. It was illegal to be against God, and it was illegal for women to wear pants. Side note, keep that in mind for later, to put a pin in it. So there was one battle that came up, and they didn't have enough soldiers. Well, all the civilians and the town people who weren't technically soldiers showed up. They showed up and they willingly picked up swords and said, "Look, I'm with you. I believe in the cause. I'm behind you." The very same way that a lot of you have here with me, like my regulars, my diehards. And I got a collective past life, getting a lot of past life regression lately. But I don't want to tell you about you guys, some of you. There's a reason that you feel called, connected, but also called to protect. It comes from a previous incarnation. And this is also why some of these karmics are being combative towards you too. They were the enemy on the battlefield with us before. On a larger scale, yeah, some of the people targeting me and this collective. Saint Michael. Wow. I actually did have a chat with Michael in the shower and a few of the other angels and called for help. At first, the military tried to dismiss myself and the soldiers, the volunteer soldiers, but we wouldn't take it, no, for an answer. So we did go to this battle. This was on the Loire River in France. Speaking of France, the French case, right? There's one. And initially, what happened was there was an invading force, another territory that came in and invaded the gatehouse. The gatehouse that was across the river that led into the city. But that was how we transported goods, food, supplies, and such across the river to the town. So they thought if they kidnapped the gatehouse, basically held it hostage, barricaded themselves in there, then we would be stuck or forced to submit. And the response was, we blew up the bridge so that they couldn't come across. And we knew we couldn't go across either, and that did pose another problem, because how do we transport stuff, supplies to the city now, the people? But we put boats in the river, and as long as the wind was right, we could get it across back and forth. was a point where there was no wind. The boat got stuck on the side of the bank that was on the enemy invader territory at that point, or where they were posted up. Which was dangerous because it meant they could have come and captured us, right? Just the last minute, like a divinely answered prayer, the wind blew and pushed us back across to safety. So there was that. And then later we went back, and this was when we were taking the territory back, right? We said, you need to leave. And they said, nee, 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 nee. And they called me a witch, and they called me a slut, and they called me all the things that you've seen them, a lot of them, try to harass me with presently. I just picked it right back up from another life. And we pushed forward. I was on the front line. Held up a banner, actually, that had Maria Jesus, Mary and Jesus' name. And at one point I was shot down with an arrow, a couple of them, one in the shoulder and one in the foot. Now you guys know I've been working out injuries that came from the abuse over the years in this life, but they're in the same spots as I was hit in the previous life. That's all connected. So I know where it came from and I know how to heal it. It's not as bad as it was on levels. Like, I don't have arrows shot through me and blood coming out that way. It's like, it's not as bad, but man, it hurts when it happens, and it needs to heal. Epigenetic memories, that's right. Oh, I remember many, many lives. Yeah. And I can place it all, not just for myself. And so this is also why, despite the fact that I've been real tender lately, I keep showing up as I'm called to. When I was hit, I was hauled into the medic tent and they didn't want me to go back out. But I pulled the arrow out of my foot and my shoulder, and I slapped some mud in there and to pack the wounds. And I got my ass back up. I was wearing armor, but the armor had to be able to move. So between the breastplate and then the arm protection, there's usually a little seam, and the arrow got right between that seam. It just happened to hit right there. Same thing with the foot. And when I got hauled into the tent, my team thought I had died and started to fall back, shrink down, fear defeat. But I got back out on the field. Ooh, I just got chills. Did you feel that? Who else felt that? And I raised that banner back up and made sure everybody could see it, even way far back in the line. And it gave everybody a second wind. And you charged forward. And the enemy forfeited and left. They scampered home. Don't give up. Cheers. That was the condensed version, but yeah. I know that my vibe tribe will be able to see the parallels in the behaviors of others towards us, and even some of the feelings, the sentiments, feelings, frequencies, whether you could place it or not. Does that make some things make more sense? I know it will for some of you. I got you. Love you. Don't trip, I got you. Bazzy. Thanks for riding it out with me. You're not alone. So, collective soul contract. We came back together, some of us, to support each other and not let the dark tag teaming energies that were trying to usurp and overthrow what we had established and built do anything of the sort. Oh, and that in that life, really what they got me on was for wearing pants, right? So that I didn't get sexually assaulted, I cut my hair very short and I wore men's clothing. But that was illegal for ladies to do, you see. So really that's what they got. That's why they killed me. It was they were bad guys. It was like bad, crooked people in the church, crooked people in the justice system that had everything to gain by causing harm and then everything to lose by the truth coming out, or I guess they felt threatened by my survival. They didn't want me to be a prophetess. And so they were looking for any little contingency, any little loophole that they could, any little just minor infraction to try to pin on me so that they could take me out. But it wasn't for the minor, they didn't really give a fuck that I was wearing pants. It was that they wanted me gone. So you see the dirty cop stuff all plays out too. And all the criminals in the cohorts. Pardon my French. Unintended. Ugh. So that's that. Yikes. Boudica. Yeah. Yeah, we love that story here, actually. Yeah, I've been through that too. I asked for help and they punished me for it. Targeted my minor child, my daughter. So yeah, Boudica is right.
They didn't just.
This is a good one. Good call.
The warrior queen. Rome took everything from her, and when there was nothing left to take, Rome took her body against her will, and then they took the bodies of her young daughters and abused them.
What did I learn? What did I learn from that? To continue to love God and not take defeat of any kind. Hello. For starters. That's one lesson. To be able to recognize the battle tactics and be battle savvier than they are. To know who I am despite what anybody had to say about me. They also locked me up in prison in that life for like a whole year at that point. And like wore me down. Started to get sick. At one point, I tried to go out a window to escape. Just to get away from these assholes. I ended up injured though. But I knew they were trying to kill me.
So in response, Boudica slaughtered all the Romans. And not just the men, but the women and the children too. Boudica was a warrior queen who purged England from the Roman infection and brought an empire to its knees. We're talking about a woman leading an army largely made up of women who went toe to toe with the world's greatest empire. This sounds like some ultra-feminist, extra-woke fan fiction, but it's actual history. And it all started with the Romans doing what they did best. They saw unconquered lands and said, "Fine." In this case, the Romans were going after the lands of the Celts. And when I say Celts, I don't mean one specific nation. The term encompasses many, many people, dozens of tribes, each with distinct customs, distinct traditions, even different languages. These tribes, these Celts, were not united either, but actually constantly battling each other, and Rome knew an enemy divided is an enemy easily conquered. Remember that next time you try to move up the social ladder and school kids? Spread lies, make them enemies, divide, and conquer. Life advice. To the Romans, the Celts were nothing but uncivilized barbarians.
Oh, no, he's
The Romans pretty much said about anyone that wasn't them, but in the case of the Celts, I mean, these guys went into battle naked, covered in painted runes, screaming and making animal noises, so I think the Romans had a point in this case. But outside of combat, the Celts were actually the
the way he could have just stopped. I had a point in that case. So funny.
that wasn't them. But in the case of the Celts, I mean, these guys went into battle naked, covered in painted runes, screaming and making animal noises, so I think the Romans had a point in this case. But outside of combat, the Celts were actually the first society that paved roads, an invention Rome later stole and claimed they came up with, like me with half of my jokes. And the Celts were also the first to have chainmail, so they were not really uncivilized, just hardcore exhibitionists when it came to fighting. In fact, the Celts even had women in leading positions, and one could argue that an ancient society that allows women to hold high positions within that society and their military is very civilized and more advanced than even some people in our contemporary world. Among the Celts, women had actually held high positions for centuries, even becoming druids, which sounds like some fantastical thing now, but at the time, druids within Celtic society were basically the bee's knees, man. They weren't combat shapeshifters like they're in video games, but if you want to play a shapeshifter druid, you can download three.
I'm so glad to hear that. Chillin', I do. That's one of the things that I try not to fret about, but I can't really help it. Probably it's the nutritionist in me. Also the nurturer. I just can't help it. I just know I want you to be all right and satisfied. I know it's a choice. Like, I know you are choosing to go out and hike and whatever, but I know often when you do that, sometimes it's a sacrifice to certain things, and trail life can be a little rough sometimes. So glad you're pausing to take care of you. Have some yummy things, comfort food. What kind of sushi did you get? What kind of street tacos? Oh, you got me curious. Good vibes.
Free from instant gaming because which I don't, and of course almost don't, because yes, it come true. And the Druids did do it. They did do it all within Celtic society, actually. They served as conduits to the gods for the religion. They performed rituals. They were also society's first and foremost doctors, men of alchemy, science, philosophy, Renaissance men, in a way, 1,500 years before the term Renaissance man was a term. And of course, the Celtic society also had Renaissance women, which I don't think ever became a term, but it should be. And this is where Boudica comes in, who many think might have been a Druid before or while she was married to the Celtic Iceni king Prasutagus. So much for the backstory. Now, the year is 43, which was when the Romans started invading what we now know as England and took down one tribe after the other. So the Iceni king Prasutagus saw the writing on the wall and made sure none of his people rebelled their way against the Romans into certain annihilation. Instead, the king decided that his people would align themselves with the Roman invaders to protect what's theirs. A move historians later famously called a bitch move. No, I get it. The Romans were a far superior force, and as I said, the Celts were divided amongst themselves, so they were often nurturing wounds from their past infighting, never at full might. So opposing the Romans was silly, and King Prasutagus instead tried to maintain peace by making a deal with Rome, promising that once he is dead, his lands and tribe would fall under their rule as long as his daughters remain in charge, along with whoever was the Roman emperor at the time. And if you know anything about how Rome operated, you know that that's literally making a deal with the devil. The Romans agreed, took over some of the Iceni lands that were part of the agreement, and once they established their presence, they told the Iceni king, "Look at me, sure. Look at me, sure. I'm the captain now." They told them that now all their crops and other stuff is grown in
I know it's like a spiritual journey. I know sometimes it's good for your mind and it's good for your body. Or your spirit, rather. I just want to make sure that you are nourished on all levels. All of those are important. So I don't push or pressure. I'm like, I suppose if you wanted to come off the trailer, you would. So I don't judge or press. I very much like to hear that you're taking good care. Pausing.
service to Rome and Rome only, and that if they want to get it back to, eat and survive,
The world
they need
is
to
much
pay
better with you in
taxes
it.
and trade with Rome, which was a bit problematic because they were only allowed to pay Rome in sesterces, the Roman currency, a currency that Iceni obviously didn't have, but not to worry because
Gotta be
the
careful,
Romans
man,
were
about
kind
raw
enough to
fish,
loan
though.
the Iceni 40 million sesterces, about $60 million today, to trade with and eventually pay back in full with interest. So, as you can see, all in all, the Iceni found themselves in a situation that reputable historians nowadays very accurately describe as they were truly and utterly, but as bad as all of this sounds, it was only light foreplay for what was about to come. In the year 54, Emperor Nero took over Rome. And if you don't know anything about Emperor Nero, let me sum him up for you real quick.
Crazy.
I hate most people. And so in the year 60, when King Prasutagus died, leaving two daughters behind that were too young to rule, his druid wife Boudica found herself in charge of the Iceni. But of course, Nero wasn't really keeping up with the #MeToo movement of the times, so women's lives decidedly did not matter to him, and then Iceni Queen was basically an invitation for him and Rome to completely take over. Emperor Nero sent General Paulinus to do his dirty work. He appointed him to be governor of all the Celtic lands, of what we now know as England. And so, new governor of England, Paulinus, used the loan the Romans gave the Iceni, the loan of 40 million sesterces, as an excuse to invade Iceni lands and have his way with the Iceni people. Paulinus said that their full repayment was actually long overdue. Okay, due right now, and since they obviously couldn't pay right now, they had to pay with whatever they had. Their belongings, their bodies, their children, and their women, and their women's
Don't be rude. That's rude.
bodies. So the men were enslaved, and the women and children were used and abused by the Roman soldiers, and among those used and abused
Don't
were
do
the
that.
heirs to the throne.
We love
The
Bob My Rolls here.
princesses, the Iceni kings and
so funny to say out loud.
daughters were only children
But
or
I'm
best
reading.
young teenagers at the time. And when Boudica tried to save her daughters and appeal to the Roman soldiers
Call
on their
names, I like
side,
it.
reminding them of the agreement her late husband had with the emperor, and that these girls were princesses who were the emperor's equal in these lands, When Boudica tried that, the Romans stripped her naked and brutalized the queen in front of everybody, over and over, for all her people to see. Then they left her and her daughters behind, beaten, bruised, and abused, believing their will to be broken, and the Roman message to Queen and fight that, reminding them of the to save her daughter.
So her husband died, and then she was targeted, and her daughters were targeted. It was a humiliation ritual tactic. It was a show of power and aggression. It was usurpation. We've seen it. We've seen all the attempts.
An appeal to the Roman soldiers' better side, reminding them of the agreement her late husband had with the emperor, and that these girls were princesses who were the emperor's equal in these lands. When Boudica tried that, the Romans stripped her naked and brutalized the queen in front of everybody, over and over, for all her people to see. Then they left her and her daughters behind.
So they sexually assaulted her young daughters, and then they publicly beat the shit out of her in front of her girls. They thought that would crush her. Boy, did they underestimate their target, much like the BHPD did to me.
Beaten, bruised, and abused, believing their will to be broken and the Roman message to have been sent.
Sweet dreams, Brian.
They didn't consider is that Boudica, she was built different, and all Rome accomplished by abusing Boudica and her girls was. I'd like to understand you. Give me that. Peter Ramos, it's a number to you, one more dead, but number. It was she to please them. She showed him it was all right to live again. The kidnappers who took it the other way. Huh? And they're gonna wish they never touched a hair on it.
He said, and the kidnappers. Okay. Let me explain this.
Ramos. Give me that. Peter Ramos. It's a number.
Boudica's daughters, they're just a number to you. He's like, please explain to me. How did I fuck up by going for Boudica and her daughters? He's saying, Boudica's daughters, they're just a number to you.
To you, one more dead.
Just one more dead, one more couple of girls raped. Just a couple of notches on your belt.
But a number.
But a number. Not people. And so he's asking what, well, who is Boudica to them then? Like, how does this affect me?
She showed him it was all right.
And his response is, their mother showed them that it was okay to live again. Boudica showed her daughters that it was okay to live again.
To live again. The kidnappers who took that away.
And the kidnappers took that away, he says. Or in this case, the Romans. But yeah, as far as the more modern day present situation goes, where the parallel crosses over, the kidnappers took this away. And they're going to wish they had not touched a hair on her daughters' heads.
Wish they never touched a hair on her head. Man, to be an artist. It depends on how good he is at it. Creasy's art is dead.
He's saying a woman can be an artist at food, at anything. Boudica's art is death. Tower. For them. Ending of the cycle.
Appreciates art is death. He's about to paint his masterpiece.
She's about to paint her masterpiece.
Boudica was a woman on a mission now, and she went to every tribe in the region who she knew had all suffered similar fates at the hands of the Romans, so it wasn't all too hard to convince these tribes to set aside their differences, stop the infighting, join Boudica, unite to crush the common enemy, to crush Rome. So before long, Boudica found herself at the head of an army of 120,000 men and women. The Celts didn't mind men and women fighting together side by side, and Boudica led this army against Rome, purging them out of the Celtic territory they had stolen, one city at a time. The first Roman settlement to fall was Camulodunum, which the Romans had turned into one of their strongholds in the region. And once there, Boudica and her Celts didn't just murder and abuse everybody in the city, they didn't just sack the city, no. They cut the Romans' people's genitals and breasts off and sewed them to their mouth so that they appeared to be eating them, forever defiled, even in death. And then Boudica...
You know what that was? You know what that message was? Oh, you wanted to sexually assault my daughters? I will make you sexually assault yourselves. That's what that was. Oh, you wanted to sexually assault my daughters? I will sew your asshole to your mouth. I'll make you sexually assault yourself.
The dead bodies on spears to whatever hole she chose. The Celtic violence knew no limit, and they were sure to pay back the Roman atrocities with at least as much ferocity. Of course, word quickly spread to Rome that some warrior woman riding around in a chariot was leading all these Celts in violent uprisings and already took down a Roman city. So the Romans were like, a woman, you say?
I'll have to ask my accountant about that.
How do you know Centipede movie people didn't get that idea from Boudica? That's a fake movie. This was a real piece of history. This really happened. She was a real woman.
They sent 200 man slaves to defeat her and teach her a lesson. Yeah, I'm not kidding. They really did send 200 man slaves to fight Boudica's army, which, I repeat, consisted of 120,000 people. Of course, Boudica and her people slapped them around like... And so the Romans then sent 2,500 Roman E-class soldiers to make a stand. But Boudica,
yes,
again,
Boudica was a real person.
And eventually, word of these two other defeats made its way to General Paulinus. Remember, Emperor Ness was appointed governor of England, who realized that, all in all, Paulinus, he had about 1 legion with him in the English territory. That is to say, 5,000 good Roman soldiers. There was no way he was ever going to defeat Boudica's army with those numbers. And Boudica, of course, kept attacking the Romans and their stolen cities one after the other, sacking Londinium, today's London, and Verulamium next, freeing all the Celtic people and growing her army to over 200,000, while killing 80,000 Romans in the process. Needless to say, this was as much of a problem.
When did Boudica live? When was she alive? 30 AD to 61 AD.
As it was an embarrassment for Rome. Emperor Nero was so embarrassed, in fact, that he considered pulling all of his people out of the conquered English territory. Rome's empire was big enough as it was, and they couldn't afford to be stretched too thin. There was no way they could send the necessary numbers of soldiers into the Celtic lands, but there was also no way they could keep losing battles to an army led by and in large parts consisting of women. So Nero thought it was better to just forfeit and forget that.
Forfeit and forget. Right. Just like Joan of Arc. Also, she kind of reminds me of Morgan. Back to Afroman.
And Angie stayed in the
That was a
bigger
fun side
house
quest.
with their children, Joseph Jr., a boy, and Josephine, a girl. He continued performing and making his living as Afroman, but he was generally like a family guy, you know, raising kids. I mean, when it was time to whoop it up at a show, he did, but he wasn't some like wild party dude. Afroman was his job. You get it. But where's the crime? You're screaming at your screen right now. I'm getting there. Okay. So fast forward to August 21st, 2022. The Adams County Sheriff's Department executed a search warrant at Aquaman's Winchester home on suspicion of drug trafficking and kidnapping. What? Apparently, a confidential informant told the police that Afroman supplied them with marijuana, like a lot of it. And he was holding women captive in cages in like a makeshift dungeon in his house, like in his creepy ass basement. We now know that that confidential informant turned out to be a former girlfriend that was out for revenge of some kind. Not the most reliable witness, but it didn't matter, okay? Law enforcement went with it. They felt that that was...
I didn't know that part. I didn't know that whole thing was sparked off by a nasty, angry, vengeful ex that was probably mad that he left her dumbass because she does toxic shit like that. Well, there's another parallel, huh?
Probable cause enough, the search warrant was signed by a judge. It alleged that there were drugs and drug paraphernalia related to trafficking, like...
That doesn't mean it was signed by a smart or non-corrupted judge.
Scales, packaging materials, money, weapons to, you know, protect, defend the drug trafficking operation. I mean, obviously, a man who famously sang about getting high must be a drug trafficker, right? So, in the raid of the house, the cops kicked the front door right off the hinges, aimed guns at his children, you know, scared the shit out of them. They ransacked the house. They seized cash that they found. I suppose they thought it was like drug-related money, whatever. Afroman wasn't home. He was actually coming home from a performance in Chicago. At any rate, they really didn't find anything illegal. Certainly not evidence of drug trafficking, and certainly not any kidnapping victims. He doesn't even have a basement in his house, you guys. Well, Afroman's home was fully equipped with security cameras. You know, he traveled a lot, so he needed to protect his home. He's got like a collection of exotic cars and things like that. Garage, whatever. Anyways, so the cameras in his house are capturing everything that's happening, and he was like watching it live on his phone until he watches the police notice it and then rip the cameras out of the wall and disconnect everything. Did they seize those cameras as evidence, you're asking? Nope. Just left them on the couch, ripped off the walls. So his ex-wife Angie was there, you know, during the raid and called him, was FaceTiming him. The police wanted to get into his safe, and at first he was like, no, you can't get into my safe. Like, fuck you. But he was concerned that they were just going to take his entire safe down to the police station and then find things in it that weren't there. So he would rather than open it while he could watch it all.
So he was concerned that dirty cops were going to plant evidence. Gee, I wonder why.
You get what I'm saying? He actually spoke to the police officers that were doing the raid at the time and asked, am I under arrest?
I saw two clips. I saw a clip of, I think it's actually in this music video, of the sheriff turning off his security cameras. Like, you can watch her disabling it because they don't want people to see what they're doing. And then I saw another clip of her in the news where she was crying and like playing the victim when they went in, corrupted, and tried to break the law against him, violate his rights, based on slander and hearsay, instead of protecting a real victim, a fucking crazy ex. Pardon my French. It's bad luck for them. They look stupid. And so does anybody who does that. PHPD.
It's hard just because I smoke? What do you mean?
You stupid. Oh no, bitch.
And you're not smart if you equate smoking weed with a lack of intelligence. That's foolish.
Arrest, and the police officer said no. He asked if they were pressing charges, and the cop said it's up to the prosecutor after reviewing whatever it is that they're seizing. And then Afroman asked if they would put the door back on the hinges, and the cop smirked and said, "We're not required to do that." So the police ended up seizing about $4,000 in cash, a vape pen.
We're not required to, and it was probably their demeanor towards him that pissed him off. And so he went and wrote that song that said, "Are you going to help me repair my gate? Are you going to help me repair my door?"
That he says,
Did you have to traumatize my kids? I can relate.
actually wasn't his, and he would admit it. He didn't care. And they found a handful of leftover joints, like roaches that had been smoked. The cash that they found was actually found in his suit pocket. He had a whole closet full of these wild, wacky custom suits. The money was from a performance that he had done.
What boat I just tried to open again?
A vape pen that he says actually wasn't his, and he would admit it. He didn't care. And they found a handful of leftover joints, like roaches that had been smoked. The cash that they found was actually found in his suit pocket. He had a whole closet full of these wild, wacky custom suits. The money was from a performance that he had done in Denver at Red Rocks with Snoop Dogg and Wiz Khalifa. The point is, it wasn't drug money, right? The rest of what was taken was just not enough to justify that kind of police response. And recreational marijuana at that time wasn't actually legal.
Mask. Oh, devil behind the mask, I told you. I picked up earlier this domestic abuser. He's manic. Okay, there's this karmic male and he's manic. And he was all up in a tizzy about stalking Divine Feminine. And he went and he made a bunch of fake accounts. I saw him typing and getting them all prepared. He was waiting for me to go live. So, especially when you get weird sexual harassment comments. Not always, but yeah. Coming from a rapist behind a screen. Keyboard warriors. See, look, forbidden warriors. Neighbors, rather. I know they're not supposed to be doing that. It's local people. Tells you about the stalking too. And the person I got a vision of earlier, before I came live, doing the fake account thing was this. They lied to a judge together the same day at the same courthouse. So it's been a big group of them, like I said.
But it was legalized a year later. So the appetite to take somebody down for a handful of roaches was not there, right? The point is, they had clearly not uncovered some drug trap.
I just split the deck, help me, and I was just thinking dance, help me dance. The dancer needs help. Yeah, people targeting me, man. Obsession. They're upset. Why are you so obsessed with me? I need help.
Trafficking ring or some human trafficking hub. There was no dungeon with people in cages. It was all imaginary, right? So when the dust settled and absolutely nothing came from the raid on this house, no charges, none of that. Afroman and his lawyer and a field team from the local Fox News affiliate went down to the sheriff's office to get back the items that had been seized from him. So the reason that he took the news with him is he wanted to make sure that the meeting was publicized for his own safety and for the awareness of the public. The police shouldn't be able to just bust up into your house, damage your property, and seize your shit, right? So the police arranged for the items to be returned in an interview room where they could film the exchange to keep everybody honest, which is ironic. So the evidence bag containing the money was labeled with the amount inside, and it said,
two cards got stuck in the bottom. Demon and poet. You got dark people trying to come for artists. Wow. That was very telling.
at $4,000. They unsealed the bag and the officers started to count the money to return it, and it was $400 short.
Wow.
The lawyer counted it, Afroman.
The two cards, I don't even remember what was it. Two cards that fell are Survivor and Strategist. I told you. I'll always be 10 steps ahead of them. It'll be 11. They hadn't given me stress-induced asthma, but I'll be 11. Alchemist, right. Oh, well, we got it. Oh, look. Matches my jacket. And my pants. The wolf. I didn't expect that to go that way. This is supposed to be a general reading. Well, I guess it does affect a lot of us here. A lot of us are supporting each other and moving through things, and you're causing, look, 11. Stress to the point where I have to deal with stuff that leaves me with less time, focus, energy for here, then that affects everybody. It affects all of us. It's like a ripple effect. And I saw it. Like, I saw some of my people start to feel some kind of way. Like, no. When we come back here, also, it's not you. I've been working through the abuse. It's been a lot. I know a lot of us have been feeling, if not like actual abuse situations through people, then the spiritual warfare of things sometimes will. I'm here. It's fine. It's not, but it will be. And so,
We counted it, another officer counted it, and the money on the table did not match the amount that was written on the sealed bag from the police search. So Afroman is pissed. Obviously, the police said that they would do an investigation. Okay. Did the police ever follow up with Afroman? No, but they did tell the news reporter that the investigation determined that the money had simply been miscounted.
Big mistake. Big. Huge.
No report was actually filed on that missing money, and $400 seems like a wild amount. Very round number to just miscount. And then there's that little bit about the cops, cutting off the security cameras so that there's no video evidence of what happened during that time.
but there is a bit of security camera footage. Okay, it was like at the same time. It must have been at this either. I don't know if they shut off all the security cameras at once or they went around one by one. And I don't remember if it was like two people in the same room, like the sheriff turning off the camera while the other cop was counting, or if it was separate rooms where one cop was counting money and then the other video caught the sheriff shutting down the security cameras. But there are two separate clips, or either it's one clip where both of them are in it doing both of those things. I think it's two separate clips, though. Maybe from two separate rooms, but either way, it did capture that. And you can see these cops going through the money. Like I said, they didn't want people to see what they were doing.
Very, very sus, as the kids say. So, Afroman.
I didn't show you, but suspicion came out of that deck I was just using. I just kind of stuck it back in there. I split the deck and it was there. But yeah, they're weird, suspicious. That's suspicious.
Aggrieved from this police encounter, Ever the Hustler decided to capitalize on the publicity from the raid that had gotten some media attention. He started posting on social media about the officers that participated in the raid, about the fact that this raid happened to him, what they did to his home, actual security footage from the raid, and he also started putting the cops on blast personally. So the officer that was in charge of counting the money at the time that it was seized was Sheriff Deputy Brian Newland. Now, Afroman found out a lot about him. Apparently, he had a bunch of kids, like a lot of kids, and he used to do drugs and party a lot before he started doing law enforcement. And he also maybe had a habit of stealing money from people during traffic stops. So things like that on everyone who participated in that raid is what he was putting out there.
Sounds like
right?
Afroman and I would get along.
Does best. He wrote silly songs, he made merchandise, he generated a lot of online engagement with songs and posts that were irreverent and entertaining. He needed money to repair his home, to replace his security cameras, and to reimburse his $400 that was missing. One thing surely was true. The problems that he was making songs about and making posts about were caused by the police. And the police told him that they had no obligation to fix his home, to replace his cameras, or to reimburse his lost money. So Afroman decided to use his freedom of speech. He did a lot of Google research, and he also had locals reaching out to him to give him, scandalous information and photos of these officers. And he put that shit to work. So Afroman even said himself that the incident gave him so much material to write about that it was a blessing in disguise. The clips on TikTok of the security footage went crazy. Everybody was cracking up, sharing and reposting the content. It was super viral. He wrote a lot of songs. He sold a lot of merchandise.
It was lemon pound cake. And in this video, it's in the music video, the lemon pound cake video, it's hilarious. Seeds. And you can see this cop walking by, and he sees the lemon pound cake on the table, and then he looks up at the security monitor, and then he looks back at the lemon pound cake, and then looks up at the security monitor like, oh shit, I want a piece of that. Oh, but there's a camera watching me, but I want a piece of that. But fuck the camera. Pardon my French.
And he teased the sheriff's department relentlessly. Over the next year or so, Afroman made a lot of posts about these officers, and he gave them delightful nicknames. So he called Brian Newland Baby Making Brian, Child Molested New Baby Mama, Newborn Newland. So Brian apparently had a bunch of kids, hence the Baby Making Brian, and he also had this prior history of statutory rape, hence the child molesting. Now, the officer seen in the raid that disconnected Afroman's security camera, Lisa Phillips, wasn't spared either. He called her Lick 'em Low Lisa, saying that she was munching on all the carpets in town. If you catch my drift. He went after every sheriff's officer that was involved in the incident. He was savage. But also, the things he said were so ridiculous that they couldn't be taken seriously. He recorded a song titled, Will You Help Me Repair My Door? And Why Are You Disconnecting My Security Camera? That was actually very catchy.
Oh, I don't think I've heard that one.
Lemon Pound Cake. Lemon Pound Cake is very funny. I mean, they're all very funny, but Lemon Pound Cake is set to the tune of Under the Boardwalk. It describes the cops kicking down the door of his house and searching his house for drugs, but then getting distracted by Lemon Pound Cake. So in the actual footage of the raid, it shows this one police officer in like tactical gear with a lock.
See him like go back and forth with his
Long gun. I think it's a long gun. Might be a handgun. Anyways, he's in the kitchen and there's like lemon pound cake on the counter and like this beautiful glass cloche. And you see the cop that's like double take this lemon pound cake. Anyways, in the song, Afroman says that it made the sheriff want to put down his gun and cut him a slice. And the videos like racked up millions of views on YouTube. And I don't know how much money he made in the AdSense for those videos, but I promise you it was more than $400. The songs are funny and the videos are top tier. 10 out of 10 recommend. Only if you have a sense of humor though.
Well, me too. And he used the security camera footage that he had as the music video.
And as entertaining as it was, there was a small group of people who did not find it funny at all. Yeah. Guess who? 7 sheriff's officers. Sean Cooley, Justin Cooley, Michael Estep, Sean Grooms, Brian Newland, Randolph Walters, and Lisa Phillips. They all sued Afroman for invasion of privacy and defamation. Invasion of privacy because Afroman was using their likeness from the security camera footage on the internet, presumably without their permission. I don't know why you need permission for security cameras in your own house. Yeah. But anyway, and defamation because the content of the songs was like, you know, they're smoking weed, look at Lisa is doing what she's doing. They were stealing from him. They took great umbrage with that. They took issue. They said that those were lies that were damaging to their reputation.
Well, that was true.
The sheriffs that wrongly raided his home and damaged his property with no recourse claimed that Afroman's music videos and social media posts resulted in their humiliation, ridicule, mental distress, embarrassment, and loss of reputation. And they wanted $4 million. Oh, they were deadly serious. So the invasion of privacy.
I stole $400 for you, and you wouldn't let me get away with it. So now I'm going to sue you for $4 million.
Were dismissed, but the defamation case proceeded to trial. Now, this is straight up tomfoolery and shenanigans, if you ask me. What an incredible waste of time and energy and resources. But damn if the trial footage is not as entertaining as all those music videos about the incident. The judge in the case was out of his fucking mind. In my opinion, totally biased and obviously trying to steer the jury to a decision that he preferred. All of the plaintiffs testified in the trial, and it didn't even seem like they understood what the case was about. Their claims of reputational damage were weak at best. But what was really clear was that their feelings were hurt. Hurt feelings are not a crime. Officer Poundcake, Sean Cooley, he testified that the song Lemon Poundcake contained lies that referred to him and his fellow officers as thieves. He also said that there were online posts about him being a thief, but he couldn't name any specific examples. He just assumed that there were posts. There were posts, but if you're testifying specifically about things that cause you reputational damage, you gotta be specific. He also claimed that hundreds of pound cakes were delivered to their office. How terrible. Randy Walters took the stand. Afroman's song about him is great.
Randy Walters is the son of a bitch.
So the defense pointed out that rap songs tend to exaggerate for the sake of entertainment, and Randy was asked if there was any way that he could definitively prove if he was a son of a bitch or not. And Randy said, oh, she's been dead for years. When Brian Newland, aka Baby Megan Brian, you know what I'm saying?
My name is Brian Newland.
When he testified, first of all, his voice, he sounds like Sling Blade.
What you got in there? Good day.
He said that these accusations of him being a pedophile ran him out of town, and he was forced to quit his dream job as an Adams County sheriff. But in the cross of his defense, he admitted that his new job in the neighboring town came with a pay raise. So were you ran out of town, Brian? So some of the most damaging testimony to the plaintiff's case came from the ex-wife of Sean Grooms, one of the sheriffs, and she essentially rebuffed all of Sean's claims that Afroman's songs and social media posts drew this negative attention to their family, causing them grave embarrassment, and directly led to the end of their marriage. But she testified that she got a restraining order against Sean when they divorced because of his behavior. It had nothing to do with Afroman's songs. Afroman himself even took the stand, and it was very simple.
Fact, they never should have came to my house in the first place.
Oh.
Fact, if they hadn't came to my house, they wouldn't have put themselves on the video camera and in my music career. All of this is their fault, and they have the audacity to sue me. These people and you are the predators and the victim at the same time. Under the circumstance that I got freedom of speech, after they run around my house with guns and kick down my door, I got the right to kick a can in my backyard, use my freedom of speech, turn my bad times into a good time. Yes, I do. And I think I'm a sport for doing so, because I don't go to their house, kick down their doors, flip them off on their surveillance cameras, then try to play the victim and sue them.
So in closing arguments, the defense laid it out very clearly. What message does this send if we find that music and social commentary, while maybe not the most tasteful thing in the world, is silenced because a public official was hurt by it? The jury deliberated for about 6 hours before returning a verdict on March 18th, 2026. And I have to say, the way this verdict was read is
man.
crazy.
In all circumstances, the jury finds in favor of the defendant. No plaintiff verdict prevailed. So the matter will be concluded with defense verdicts.
The judge didn't really read it at all. He just reviewed the jury forms to make sure that they were signed properly and prepared correctly. And then he just said, yeah, this is it. What? The jury concluded that Afroman's use of his own home security footage to mock the police was protected by freedom of speech. Hallelujah! However, the ridiculous judge decided that the court costs needed to be split between the plaintiff and the defense. He was mad that Afroman won that case, and he wanted to punish him. Anyway, the attention from the trial just drove more traffic to Afroman's social media presence, and here I am talking about it. The music videos, and the TikToks, and all the rest have only just gotten more views since then, and it puts more money in Afroman's pocket, keeps more eyes and ears on the content that is so embarrassing to the sheriff's department. This is what's called the Streisand effect. It's when you end up bringing more attention to something that you're trying to make go away. The reason it's called that is because Barbra Streisand's home was featured.
Didn't I tell you about that last night? Right? Was it last night? Sometime this week, I believe. It was last night, though.
On like Google Maps, like the overview map of her home, and she didn't want that, so she's like, I'm gonna need you to remove this house. And then people were like, what house? But at the end of the day, common sense did prevail, and that is the story of Afroman's defamation case. Let me know.
Yeah, so she wanted the piece taken down for privacy purposes, but because her name was already well known, everybody looked. Everybody noticed. Right. At first, it was just like the local town that knew about it. Then, when she asked for it to be removed, it went viral, basically. So, like, national, and then it went all over.
What you think about the Afroman trial? Have you seen these videos? Go watch them and come back and tell me all about it. If you want to know any
Better off red. Alright, I have some things to do. Get some rest. Do no harm. Take no crap. I will work on getting everything adjusted. Check in with you very soon. Check one thing. Let me check one thing. Dear. There is a new true crime out.
Growing up, the Bermuda Triangle was a big deal. The mysterious trilateral territory boasts tales of ships and planes going missing, gone without a trace. But once speculation stops and science steps in, it's clear that the whole mystery is fairly easy to explain. Today, we're talking about the Bermuda Triangle and debunking the myths surrounding this conspiracy. But before we fly into the unknown, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and let us know in the comments below what other strange occurrences you would like to hear about. Okay, now let's get lost in some weird history. The one thing everybody knows about the Bermuda Triangle is that people go missing there. Ever since Flight 19 and its 14 crew members disappeared in the area in 1945, legends of this cursed section of sea have skyrocketed as more and more aircraft and people go missing. What most people don't appreciate about the triangle is that it's big, really big. While maps of the supposed area tend to differ, it can generally be described as the area spanning from Miami to San Juan, then stretching all the way to the island of Bermuda. That's a pretty hefty hunk of ocean. All that space is smack dab in the middle of high traffic areas when it comes to boats and planes. And naturally, with a lot of traffic and a big, deep ocean, you're going to see a lot of people go missing. Or more accurately, you're not going to see them. One generally curious aspect of the Bermuda Triangle isn't its penchant for magically gobbling up every ship that enters its domain. It's the clouds, man. The skies that float above the triangle are filled with unusual hexagonal-shaped clouds, with perfectly straight edges that can span from 20 to 55 miles across. We know this sounds like something out of Sesame Street with all these shapes, but the reality is not so pleasant. These precarious polygons create some pretty dangerous air blasts. The winds they generate reach up to 170 miles per hour and can slam any unfortunate vessels which happen to be in the area at the time. And that's not all they can do. These clouds are also capable of shooting the bursts of air directly down on top of planes, which in turn creates 45-foot waves for any ships that survive the initial blast. A real combo attack. Hexagon clouds were probably not the shape you expected to be the culprit here.
This is the Bermuda Triangle explained. It's weird history. I'm going to link it right here.
While we're on the subject of storms, we have to bring up hurricanes. After all, the Atlantic Ocean is just lousy with them. And while the Atlantic coastlines may look lovely, they're also a veritable hotbed for inclement weather. Within the triangle itself, the cold air fronts that meet with the warm water create the perfect cocktail of chaotic weather. You don't want to be a weary water traveler when that happens. But as the story goes, too many do brave the nasty tempests and pay the price for not respecting the triangle. Everyone has their theories about what causes the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. Some say alien abductions. Others think sea monsters are responsible. But one scientist, Karl Kruszelnicki, says he can easily explain all the disappearances. His theory replaces aliens with bad weather and sea monsters with plain old human error. The patch of sea where the Bermuda Triangle calls home is a particularly rough patch when it comes to the sky, the air, and, well, all of it. Pair that with high amounts of air and sea traffic driven by accident-prone humans, and you have yourself a recipe for disaster. Kruszelnicki believes the combination of the high waves and even higher winds is a lethal trap for a distracted or inexperienced pilot or sailor. The triangle gets a bad rap for the sheer surplus of ships and planes it devours. So much so that it is the subject of many statistical studies. One such study done by Lloyd's of London and the United States Coast Guard showed that, in fact, the Bermuda Triangle just ain't that special. The results from the study showed that the loss of life in cargo is really the same, percentage-wise, as most any other area. They just don't brag about it as much. But media bias against the triangle aside, you can't really define such a large, dangerous area and then be surprised when vessels start to go missing there. It's practically expected. In your mind, picture a big wave. Bigger, bigger. Yes, that's the one. Now, multiply that by about 10. That's around how large waves can rise up out of the ocean at just about any old time they want. When the weather's rough, it's not surprising to see waves up to 98 feet high.
Also,
Obviously,
dang
that's
it,
bad
you
news
said
for any ship.
you said something about the gypsy movie. I forgot what you called it, but I was putting something in the description today, and I noticed your comment. I missed it last night. That was very good call.
Ships sailing the ocean blue at that time. But waves that high are also capable of knocking low-flying planes right out of the sky. The study done by Lloyd's of London seems to back up this theory, and even attributes a 49-foot sporadic wave and sailor inexperience as the cause for the loss of Flight 19, which we'll get to later. Flight 19 was the name given to a group of 5 torpedo bombers that became famous for going completely MIA. It isn't every day that 5 planes, 14 airmen, and the subsequent team sent to find them all vanish without a trace. And the little evidence or statistical analysis at the time only led to a wave of conjecture and whisper down the lane type shenanigans. This was the 1960s, well before you could take the internet out of your pocket and debunk something instantly. When word of the Navy fleet disappearing all over the Atlantic began to spread, so did the tall tales. Capitalizing on this triangle frenzy were writers that only served to add more flame to the fires of speculation. An Argosy magazine article titled "The Deadly Bermuda Triangle" was written by Vincent Gaddis in 1964 and started much of the lore surrounding the patch of water today. But once these stories devolve into whimsical tales about the lost city of Atlantis, it becomes harder to take them seriously.
Why so?
You're going to hear a lot of talk that says Flight 19 was flying in ideal conditions, and thus their disappearance can only be explained by something otherworldly. To that, we say, hold on. Despite what some, quote, historians, end quote, will tell you about the flying conditions that fateful day, we know the facts. The most famous disappearance in Bermuda Triangle history was, as it turned out, just extremely unlucky. Since this was a training mission, the crew was less than desirable for the conditions. When you're battling 49-foot waves in a low-flying plane, you want an experienced captain, which they had. However, he was overcoming a hangover at the time. Hey, we've all been there, Cap. Like a Larry David in Curb Your Enthusiasm, where everything just gets worse and worse. Things got worse. Lieutenant Charles Taylor, known for being terrible at his job, forgot his watch and had a malfunctioning compass. To make matters worse, nobody on board seemed to even know where they were. So Taylor, living up to his reputation, made a bad decision that led his men deeper into the terrible Atlantic storms and their eventual demise. Just like Curb Your Enthusiasm. While we're talking about Flight 19, we should talk about the rescue planes sent in to find them. They're part of this story, too. While this crew also met their untimely demise in the Atlantic Ocean, they did not simply disappear into thin air, as the legends would have you believe. As is typical, this is a detail that gets lost in the fable of it all.
Oh, I asked if
Not
those were
only did the
movies.
rescue aircraft remain visible, it straight up exploded. Witnesses claim they saw the aircraft, which had already gained the ominous nickname of Flying Gas Tank, erupt in the sky, and its remains crash into the sea.
Classics.
A subsequent investigation found oil.
I don't recognize the names. Rusty Lock, Stock, and Are those movies? Two Smoking Barrels.
Debris when the plane went down, confirming its ending in this unfortunate tale. We talked about Vincent Gaddis, the Mac Daddy of all Bermuda Triangle storytellers. Instead of getting bogged down with facts, Gaddis decided his analysis of the disappearance would sell more copies if he exaggerated the facts to add an aura of mystery. His 1964 article titled "The Deadly Bermuda Triangle" delved into the notion that the disappearances couldn't possibly be coincidence. Even though the article was published in a magazine that prided itself as an American masterpiece of fiction, the hype worked. His outlandish ideas about disappearances in the small slice of the world inspired other writers and movie makers to give their own spin on the triangle. And that is how legends are born. The Mary Celeste story is an interesting one. A large merchant ship has an uneventful career until one day it disappears. The ship was bound for Italy from New York, but never made it to its destination. It was eventually found adrift in the Atlantic. Its discovery didn't stop Bermuda Triangle speculators from blaming the missing crew and the ship's condition on the three-pointed chunk of ocean. A guy named Charles Berlitz even penned a bestseller called The Bermuda Triangle, which claimed that Mary Celeste was another victim of the triangle. The book was a world-renowned success, but there was one glaring error within the pages. The ship was found abandoned on a completely different side of the Atlantic, a couple thousand miles away. But if you're still not convinced, hey, we've got a bridge to sell you. As far as Bermuda Triangle theories go, even we have to admit this one sounds pretty badass. One explanation for the Bermuda Triangle claims that ships are disappearing into the lost city of Atlantis. The claims of force fields surrounding the city and fire crystals which can burst into pure energy are alleged to be the very things bringing down the planes and ships. What sounds like Jason Momoa working overtime may actually just be methane gas, which is still kind of like talking about Jason Momoa. Methane can become trapped in ice molecules and become methane hydrate. This one admittedly sounds like a bit of a reach, since the last time methane trapping would have been around is the Ice Age. That's like 15,000 years ago. But if this were somehow happening in the past 100 years, it would absolutely impact ships the way this Atlantis conspiracy says it would. No word on how the DC management shakeup news affects this particular theory. We've spent this whole video saying some pretty negative things about the Bermuda Triangle. So let's end with all of us saying one nice thing about the triangle. We'll go first. Despite its bad reputation, the triangle is not considered one of the danger zones for cargo ships. Wasn't that nice? Sure, it has its fair share of tropical storms and turbulent weather. And of course, there are disappearances. Don't forget those. But any cargo hauler will tell you there are places so undesirable for ships that make the Bermuda Triangle look like a kiddie pool. A study in 2013 that ranked the most hostile shipping environments was done by the WWF, the wildlife one, not the hit you upside the head with a steel chair one. And wouldn't you know it, the Triangle didn't even get an honorable mention. It turns out BT is more preferred than the South China Sea, the East Indies, or the British Isles. Maybe next year, Bermuda Triangle. Maybe next year. So what do you think? Do you think the triangle is real or just nonsense? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from
The Michigan Triangle.
It's on everybody's top 5 list of legendary creatures, the Loch Ness Monster. Sightings date back to the 6th century. And just when you think the creature and the legend may have died down, some new eyewitness accounts pop up to remind you the story is still very much alive. This is Loch Ness, a mist-shrouded lake in the Scottish Highlands. Its waters are murky, black ink, dark enough to hide one of the most iconic and elusive beasts of all time.
I've seen it all in Loch Ness, but this is just something I've seen I can't explain, so.
It's July 2020. Firefighter and lifelong Loch Ness resident Ross Bacalli is overlooking the water from the shore when he records this.
Oh, goodness.
It's 12 feet long, about 4 feet wide, grey in colour. Seems to be moving into the waves against the wind, occasionally breaking the surface.
Take another look. The image is hard to see, so let's zoom in, slow it down, and outline the figure in the water. And Ross's sighting isn't the only recent one of its kind. In September 2019, Stephen Chalice is on vacation when he snaps this unbelievable photo.
I'm guessing that what I saw was 8 foot long, so there might have been a bit more either end of that underneath the water. So you could be talking about a fish that was 10, 12 feet long.
Giant triangle.
Whatever this is, it's massive. Field researcher Ken Gerhardt is one of the world's foremost experts on mysterious creatures, and is writing a book.
The concept of the pyramids, the thought process behind it was like the third eye point.
Like somebody asked me about ascension earlier. It's like to connect up. Transmission tower.
Assistant, and this leads me to believe that yes, in fact, there is a population of remarkable, immense animals in Loch Ness.
So are these just big fish stories or something
Oh, wait.
more? We turn these amazing images
The
over to our
Highland-
team of analysts to
the
see if they would
Highlanders
hold up
behind
under
what
scrutiny.
I read about?
Our marine biologist, Dr. Shay Conger, begins her evaluation with the photos taken by Stephen Chalice. Could we be looking at some kind of fish? Conger says no.
Beautiful.
It's emerging pretty prominently from the water, and you don't see any protruding fins.
Conger concludes that it must be some sort of massive marine mammal. But upon closer examination, she notices something else that seems a bit fishy.
When I look at this image, I see a couple of red flags. If an object or animal is submerged in water, we would see a series of eddies and ripples around the entirety of this animal, extending out pretty far. Instead, what we see are a series of regular waves surrounding this animal and a small trailing lake behind it.
Based on those suspicions, we turn the photos over to our forensic video analyst, Michael Prima.
I performed what's called a smart report of the digital image that was provided, and it reported inconsistencies with the digital information. So in layman's terms, the picture of the alleged Loch Ness monster is not an authentic image.
But what about the Macaulay video? We have no reason to believe it's a hoax.
It's a pretty calm day, which means that whatever's on the surface of the water is not a wave or other associated item. So I can say that there is probably a large object here.
So what is it? Conger says she can also rule out a log or any other inanimate object, but she does have a theory.
A recent study utilizing eDNA was able to identify that there are in fact eel species within this lake. It's possible that some of these species could be large, however, they are as of yet undefined.
So we have a split decision this time. The unbelievable photos of the Loch Ness monster are exactly that. Unbelievable. The wave motion of the wake was the decider. As for the video, we think it's real, and we think it's an eel. Still, sociobiologists believe that because of our history as a prey species, humans will always be fascinated by stories of animals big enough to eat us. This is the Barents Sea, located between Russia and the North Pole. It's one of the most remote and unexplored places on Earth. And one deep-sea fisherman there has brought creatures to the surface that are so bizarre, his Instagram account has made headlines.
That's strange.
Fish with bulging lips, what looks like human dentures,
That's strange.
and fluorescent red-colored eyes. Creature heads shaped like aliens. The images are so bizarre, and there are so many of them. Journalist MJ Benias, who covers the unexplained, says it's made people wonder if there's something unnatural going on below.
These creatures look so bizarre that people naturally question something's wrong. One theory is that these aren't natural animals, but rather the product of some sort of bizarre mutation.
Look again for yourself. Mutation seems like a reasonable explanation for this. And it turns out the idea of mutated Russian fish may not be far-fetched, as our military expert Tim McMillan explains.
Any government that has any kind of nuclear proliferation program has always had this problem of how do you get rid of your waste? And for a number of years, the Soviet Union's answer was dumping it into the Barents Sea. 17,000 nuclear containers, multiple different nuclear powered ships were sunk, and an entire nuclear submarine from a period of about the 1950s until the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Whoa. So the Soviets used the Barents Sea as a nuclear toilet bowl for decades. And as our physicist, Dr. Hakeem Oluseyi explains, radiation and DNA
That's
don't
really cool.
mix. Radiation is really
No, it's a Harley Quinn set.
flying along. And when
And
they
then
encounter a DNA molecule,
clean
they can
and
strike it
comfortable
and break it and
warm.
change it. So when DNA is subject to radiation, then what happens is the instructions for writing a new animal are changed. So you can end up with anything virtual. A recent scientific study found that a Soviet nuclear submarine at the bottom of the Barents Sea was nearly 1 billion times more radioactive than previously estimated. So are these freaky fish the result of all that dumping? Our marine biologist, Dr. Shay Conger, looks for answers. Conger looks first at the fish's shape, and scales.
If these fish were impacted by radiation, we would expect to see strange bumps or protrusions on different parts of the body. But I don't see any signs of radiation sickness or poisoning throughout this animal. Its epidermal tissue actually seems to be pretty intact.
Okay, so Conger says these fish aren't the victims of a nuclear waste dump. But then what else could explain some of these bizarre features? Conger has a theory.
So they undergo a process of what we call barometric trauma.
It turns out that some of these fish have the bends. When human divers come up too quickly from the deep, a change in pressure causes the gases in their body to expand. Well, same for fish.
Often these fish will come to the surface with their stomachs sticking out of their mouth because of the extreme pressure of having the gases within their body tissues expand at such a quick rate.
But there's got to be more to this fish story, right? Conger says the real story was millions of years in the making.
Each species on Earth has a very predictable and well-defined evolutionary pathway that makes it what it is today. These animals aren't alien, they're just adapted to an extremely different environment than we're used to.
That is really sad.
The jury is still out about the long-term effects this contamination will have on marine species. Dr. Conger cautions that the impact could take decades to be fully felt. For us, natural evolution and the bends explain these weird-looking fish. So our verdict? This is a non-nuclear phenomenon. In October 2019, a team of divers sets off to explore a sunken World War II ship off the Norwegian coast. Instead, they see this. The footage shows the team in a close encounter with a huge, drifting, gelatinous blob. The video was played all over the world. And it's not lost on people that these are the exact waters the dreaded legendary sea monster called the Kraken was known to inhabit. Look at it up close. The giant floating orb is as big as a person. And when the divers turn their flashlights on it, it appears as if the sphere is filled with hundreds of thousands of tiny creatures. Also inside is an orange mass. Some speculate that this is a tentacle. Captain Nils Bodner says he's never seen anything like it in 25 years at sea.
We didn't know what it was, and as we were swimming closer, it was actually bigger and bigger. It was like an alien thing in the water.
Field researcher Ken Gerhardt speculates whether this orb could actually be the spawn of the Kraken.
So the legend of the Kraken is probably one of the most celebrated sea monsters of all time. Based on its physical descriptions, the multiple arms, the massive size, and just the reputation for being very malevolent and snatching sailors off of ships.
Legends say that the Kraken could devour a ship's entire crew at once. But despite its fearsome reputation, the monster also seemingly had its benefits. It allegedly swam accompanied by huge schools of fish. Brave fishermen could risk going near the beast to secure a bountiful catch. Unfortunately, Captain Bodner said his team didn't have much air left in their scuba tanks, so they could only document this encounter for a few minutes. But our experts had plenty of time. Let's see what they have to say. Our video forensics expert, Michael Primo, examines the footage to determine if it's too good to be real.
The way that the light bounces off and through this object helped us to authenticate this frame by frame. So at this spot, we can see, again, translucent behavior of the subject behind the object, and then some sort of shadowing from his reflection. So I'm leaning more toward that this object was real.
So if it's not a hoax, what is it? Marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger weighs in.
It could be jelly or cnidarian, which is a stinging animal. However, sea jellies have really distinct organelles and stinging cells and anatomies. This doesn't have any really defined and clear organs.
But apparently there are other deep-sea organisms that look like gelatinous blobs.
Maybe it's some really large form of a hooded nudibranch.
Conger says nudibranchs are sea slugs that secrete a sweet smell, often compared to watermelon, for defense purposes. But they are typically only about 4 inches long. So if it's too blobby to be a jellyfish and too large to be a nudibranch, what's left? Could it be an embryo from the legendary Kraken?
I was going to say, it looks like an embryo.
The
But it's
Kraken
so
was an
big.
exaggerated version of an animal we now know to be real.
We really can attribute historical sightings of the Kraken to known squid species today, like the giant and colossal squid. I wouldn't say it's out of the frame of possibility.
In fact, we've seen live and dead versions of both species dating back to 1853. And it's believed they can grow to nearly 60 feet.
Wow.
So maybe it is a Kraken egg.
I mean...
But not so fast. After a DNA analysis of the mass, scientists are issuing a new opinion.
It was determined that this was actually the egg casing of a short-finned squid. That's really cool because this object appears to be extremely large, but in reality, it was the egg case of an animal that's only about a foot long. So it's possible that such a small organism can lay such a huge egg casing because it's just full of water.
The lesson here is that in the ocean, small things can come in large packages. So our verdict? This is the egg sac of a short-finned squid. But what about that orangey mass in the center? Scientists believe it's probably ink from the female squid who injected it while making the sphere. London, England, March 2016. A passenger is enjoying a scenic ride in a cable car overlooking the fabled Thames River.
Wild, man.
But something in the water below catches his eye, and he manages to capture this shaky but shocking footage. The video is unsteady and unfocused, so let's slow it down and zoom in. It appears to show a dark shape as it surfaces momentarily and then dips back beneath the murky waters. For field researcher King Gerhardt, this might be proof of an impressive discovery.
The humps are characteristic of alleged sea monster accounts from around the world. So this could potentially be something unknown.
The video naturally went viral, with people comparing the creature to the Loch Ness monster and another legendary creature.
The Lake Windermere monster, or Nessie, is an aquatic creature that's been reported from Windermere Lake in northern England, which is one of the largest lakes in England. And sightings are fairly recent for the most part.
Gerhardt notes that all famous sea monsters seem to share some common traits. Could they also share a common ancestor?
All of our lake monsters worldwide seem to dwell in cold water lakes along the lines of latitude from 40 to 60 degrees north, and with the highest concentration along the latitude line of 50 degrees. And the physical descriptions are also very similar. Massive serpentine animals ranging anywhere from 15 to 30 feet across.
Field researcher Cliff Barrickman says there's an even stranger possibility that stems from urban myths dating all the way back to the Victorian era.
There is a theory that what people are seeing is actually some sort of escaped crocodile or an alligator. People have reported seeing swans sucked from the top of the water and dragged underneath to their deaths. What's doing that? Maybe it is one of these escaped alligators or crocodiles or something like that.
For Gerhardt, though, the possibilities are quite limited. Sea monsters, as he said, or something equally big.
We could be dealing with some type of whale that strayed out of the ocean and came into fresh water. And in fact, this behavior has been documented before.
50 years ago, the Thames was so polluted it was considered to be biologically extinct. Since then, new protections have been put in place to restore the river, and the wildlife has returned. Could this be nature healing itself with a vengeance? Let's see what our experts have to say. When our marine biologist, Dr. Shay Conger, analyzes the video, she has her doubts about one popular online theory making the rounds.
Some people have speculated that this could be a submarine temporarily coming above the surface of the water. This doesn't look like a submarine to me because we don't see anything like a periscope. Rather, it's just kind of ambiguous humps.
Now, Dr. Conger has told us before that pollution could lead to strange mutations, but she doubts that this is some kind of giant mutant croc.
Crocodiles or alligators are exothermic animals that are adapted to warm environments. And the Thames is a fairly cold water estuary, and they would have a really hard time surviving here.
So what about a wayward whale? It wouldn't be the first time. A young minke whale was actually spotted in the Thames as recently as 2021.
If I had to guess, this looks something like a whale or other very large creature. The size of this object does fall within several large whale species, and in fact, humpback whales have been discovered in the Thames. And there's also been other species of whales that have been found here, including bottlenose whales.
Wildlife biologist Dr. Stephanie Shiloh respectfully disagrees. She thinks there's something fishy about the video.
It doesn't look like any sort of sea animal. It has these points emerging from the water. Whales and dolphins are really smooth, and it doesn't seem to be moving like an animal. We're not seeing it shift at all. And we see this dark shadow, but again, that's not moving at all. The other suspicious thing is when we see the so-called animal start to submerge, we don't see that dark spot disappear. So I think what we're seeing is just something added. I think this is some sort of altered video.
So yes, this could be a hoax, but based on Dr. Conger's analysis, we're going to call this one an unidentified creature. I, for one, am calling this just another reason I'll never be taking a dip in an English river. With a length of nearly 4,000 miles, the Yangtze is the third longest river in the world. Its waters are home to several unique aquatic species. But in September 2019, a viral video captures an image of something unprecedented. Taken from a ferry dock, the video captures what looks like a mysterious creature slithering along the surface of the water. You can't see a head, but that sure looks like a powerful tail. And eyeballing its size relative to its distance from the dock and the height of this man observing the scene, it appears to be at least 10 feet long. Once the video goes viral, it racks up tens of millions of views, and a new legend is born.
People dubbed the creature the Three Gorges water monster. Some have speculated that this creature could actually be a giant water snake or eel of some kind that has mutated and become huge thanks to pollution.
Field researcher Ken Gerhardt has extensively studied many of the legendary beasts said to inhabit the waterways of China.
In this part of the world, there are legends of mythical serpent-like creatures. You have the dragons known as the Loch, which are described as huge and serpentine and scaly, with 4 stubby limbs, each with 5 claws. There's also the Naga, described as dark and serpentine, up to 40 feet in length.
So what is this mysterious object slithering through the water? It doesn't seem to be tied to anything towing it along. What does that mean? Let's check with our experts. First, we take the video to our marine biologist, Dr. Shay Conger.
What we see in this video is what appears to be a pretty large animal that appears to have some sort of a tail that's moving back and forth.
Dr. Conger's first guess is that this might be some kind of large eel, but the largest known eel, coincidentally called the European conger, has never been sighted in these waters.
I don't think there's species of eel that are as large as this in the area.
Conger says when it comes to endemic Yangtze River creatures, there are plenty of cool candidates.
One of the unique animals to the area is the giant salamander. It can get up to 6 feet long and weigh over 100 pounds. But I don't think this is the giant salamander because it has a lot of irregularities on the top of it. And if this were a type of salamander, we would expect this would be kind of a smooth animal with a smoother, longer tail moving through the water.
Dr. Conger wonders if this might be the elusive Chinese sturgeon, which can reach lengths of 16 feet.
They evolved over 100 million years ago, so they're, in essence, living prehistoric animals. However, sturgeon have really defined tail fins that would be sticking above the surface of the water. And because I don't see that type of fin or tail, I can conclude this probably isn't a sturgeon.
So could it just be a hoax? We ask our resident video forensic expert, Michael Primo.
I don't see any major splicing that took place throughout this object as it's swimming, if you will. I do not believe that this recording has been doctored or manipulated with malicious intent.
But Primo digs deeper and finds a telltale sign that things may not be as they seem.
When we look at the ripples as this object is traveling through the water, there is no definitive pattern as it's traveling through the water that you would expect to see from something that we know is like a fish or a shark. There are some unnatural behaviors. On further investigation, we came across this recording that is allegedly a dark-colored rubber airbag.
Primo suggests that's not a tail propelling a creature through the water, just a strong Yangtze current moving one end of the big airbag back and forth.
So it is possible that this is what we were actually seeing in the river, and it wasn't actually some sort of river monster.
Pollution.
So, about the theory that the Yangtze River monster was created by pollution. Turns out that's true. But it's not an overgrown snake. It's a long black rubber industrial airbag, likely discarded by a nearby shipyard. But still, there is a lesson here. More and more of the Yangtze's unique aquatic life is going extinct due to pollution and overfishing.
Well, going on for you.
Almost everyone has heard of the Bermuda Triangle, a small region of the North Atlantic said to have sent countless boats and aircraft to a watery grave. But you probably haven't heard of the Lake Michigan Triangle, with sunken ships, vanishing aircraft, and UFO sightings. This allegedly haunted area of the Great Lakes has earned a reputation for being frightening and unexplainable. So, today we're talking about the mysterious Lake Michigan Triangle. But before we dive in, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and leave a comment and let us know what other terrifying places you would like to hear about. Okay, time to set sail into the uncharted waters of weird history. On the Wisconsin side, there's Manitowoc. On the Michigan side, there's Ludington to the north and Benton Harbor to the south. Unexplained phenomena and frightening legends related to the region date all the way back to the late 17th century, when a French vessel disappeared with the tide, never to be seen again. The French explorer René Cavalier, Sieur de la Salle, started working on a massive ship designed for animal hauling and decided to name it Le Griffon. In August of 1679, his wood was finally shipshape. They set sail, traveling from Niagara to Michilimackinac. Some historians say the ship had larger ambitions beyond the outpost, to discover a northwest passage to China and Japan. Which would have been a pretty long trip, and that's why they call it exploring. Unfortunately, Le Griffon vanished while traversing the Lake Michigan Triangle. La Salle had already departed for the mainland, and his remaining 6 crew members met the same fate as his ship. In 2001, a researcher named Steve LeBaire found what he claimed to be Le Griffon's bowsprit at the bottom of Lake Michigan. LeBaire's findings have yet to be verified, but the spar did include sculptures of griffins, the ship's namesake, which would be a strange coincidence. Sadly, the rest of the ship has never been recovered. 200 years later, the deadliest open water sinking on the Great Lakes would propel the Lake Michigan Triangle into infamy. In the wee hours of September 8, 1860, the wooden-hulled side-wheel steamship PS Lady Elgin collided with the much smaller schooner Augusta, which was loaded down with lumber and headed for Chicago. You really need to be extra alert during lumber season. Those boats don't exactly stop on a dime. Strangely, the smaller ship seemed untouched after the collision. The Augusta continued on for Chicago like nothing happened, as the Lady Elgin took on more and more water. Hundreds of sleeping passengers who had been partying all night received a rude awakening when the ship's crew began their evacuation efforts. Witnesses said shipmates did everything possible to cover the hole, including trying to plug in mattresses, but nothing worked. The lake seemed determined to swallow the ship. 300 people perished as a result of the crash, including the Lady Elgin's captain, Jack Wilson, who spent his final hours saving as many passengers as possible. Built in 1870, the 132-foot-long, 3-masted schooner Thomas Hume was part of a fleet of ships that belonged to lumber baron and general old-timey rich guy Charles Hackley when it disappeared within the Lake Michigan Triangle in 1891. Sailing alongside one of its sister ships, the Ralph Simmons, the Thomas Hume embarked from Muskegon to Chicago with a large shipment of lumber. After delivering the wood, both ships turned around to venture back toward Muskegon. Seeing ominous storm clouds gathering in the distance, the crew of the Ralph Simmons decided to turn back and stay in Chicago until the weather improved, which, considering it was Chicago, must have really said something about the weather. But the Thomas Hume kept on toward home, never to be seen again. When the Ralph Simmons returned to Muskegon 2 days later, there was no sign of his sister ship in the harbor. Hackley and his business partner put up a $300 reward for information on the Halo's whereabouts, but the ship and its 7 crew members were nowhere to be found. Multiple search operations also resulted in failure. Fast forward to 2005, when professional recovery diver Taras Lysenko found the intact remains of the Thomas Hume in the southeastern portion of Lake Michigan. Shipwreck experts have since shared their theories about what likely happened to the ship. Prevailing theories that the storm produced turbulent seas, which caused the vessel to capsize. Should have waited out the storm at a Cubs game. And even though it had avoided disaster in 1891, the Ralph Simmons later succumbed to the Lake Michigan Triangle on November 22nd, 1912. Apparently, the triangle operates under the same rules as the Final Destination films. The ship and its 16 crew members, including Captain Hermann Schunemann, decided to sail from Thompson, Michigan to Chicago, all to deliver a load of at least 5,000 Christmas trees. But the boat never made it. On November 23rd, the ship was seen flying a distress flag in clear conditions, which was eerie. That could mean anything from an injured crew member to an infestation of pirate ghosts. But when a rescue boat finally arrived at the location, there was no sign of the Ralph Simmons anywhere. Wreckage from the ship, including Christmas trees and Captain Schunemann's wallet, washed ashore in the following decades, temporarily transforming the beach into an especially obvious Banksy painting. Yeah, I don't get that joke either. But it wasn't until October 1971 that the Ralph Simmons was finally found by scuba diver Gordon Kent Bell-Richard off the coast of Two Rivers, Wisconsin. In late October of 1921, the Roosevelt left High Island, Michigan, bound for Benton Harbor. But the ship encountered some kind of disturbance along the way, and its wreckage was found 42 miles from Milwaukee. None of the ship's 11 crew members were accounted for, and their remains were never recovered. While some people claim the Roosevelt met its demise during a storm, others believe it was involved in some sort of clash with another vessel. But considering no accidents were reported by any other ships in the area at the time, that theory doesn't hold much water. And there are always so many boat jokes. You knew we were going to get a water punch sooner or later. So what really happened to Roosevelt? To this day, no one knows.
Like, I think it's
The
an
fact that
alien
the ship's
thing.
yawl, or two-headed sail, was never recovered potentially adds another layer to an already complex mystery. People have suggested that the yawl may have been taken by a souvenir by whomever or whatever sank the ship. Just in case you thought that boats were the only things at risk in the Lake Michigan Triangle, consider the story of George R. Donner, captain of the coal-powered vessel McFarland, who vanished from his cabin on April 29th, 1937. Days earlier, the McFarland had picked up a shipment of coal from Erie, Pennsylvania. The ship had no problems traversing the Great Lakes on its return voyage until it arrived in the Triangle. After successfully guiding his ship through rough, icy waters, Captain Donner retired to his quarters late on April 28th to get a few hours of sleep. When the McFarland's first mate knocked on Captain Donner's door as they approached Fort Washington early on April 29th, there was no answer. The door to the captain's quarters was locked, so the crew searched the galley for their skipper, but there was no sign of him anywhere. This prompted the men to break down Captain Donner's door, believing he'd fallen into a deep coma-like sleep, or maybe he was totally hammered. Hey, he was a sea captain. Instead of discovering their captain inside, sleeping off a massive hangover, the crew found nothing but an empty cabin. Captain Donner was never found, and the case remains as much of an enigma as it was in 1937. Arguably, even more upsetting than a plane crash is a plane vanishing forever, its passengers never to be recovered. That's what happened to Northwest Airlines Flight 2501 in 1950 while flying over the Lake Michigan Triangle. En route from New York City to Seattle, the plane had reached the eastern shoreline of Lake Michigan just after midnight on June 24th. The plane's captain, Robert C. Lynn, requested clearance from air traffic control to descend to 2,500 feet in order to avoid a lightning storm brewing over the Great Lake. Captain Lynn's request was denied, and a short time later, the plane vanished. Lynn, 2 crew members, and 55 passengers disappeared along with it. At the time the plane went MIA, a local on the ground told reporters he saw a terrific flash out in the lake. This strange light was seen by plenty of others, one of whom explained it was a funny light. It looked like the sun when it goes down. It only lasted a second and then was gone. These ghostly sights and sounds have led to speculations that something supernatural, even extraterrestrial, caused the plane to go missing.
I don't blame you. Pretty toxic to be around.
The worst commercial airplane disaster of its time, the disappearance of Flight 2501 remains mired in mystery. The only clues ever recorded were some bits of debris and scattered remains that washed ashore. Subsequent searches have failed to uncover the aircraft. For a time, adventure fiction writer Clive Cussler funded an annual quest to retrieve Northwest Flight 2501 from its watery grave. But every year, the search team returned to shore empty-handed, In February 1978, West Michigander Steve Kubatsky was reported missing during a cross-country skiing expedition. As authorities swept the area for signs of Kubatsky, they discovered a set of footprints that led right to the eastern shore of Lake Michigan, and then ended abruptly, like he'd just been raptured and returned to his kingdom beneath the waves. After Kubatsky's skis and backpack were recovered nearby, everyone assumed he'd fallen through the surface ice on the lake and met his demise, even though the ice and snow over Lake Michigan were especially thick that winter. But in a shocking twist, Kubatsky woke up in a grassy field 15 months later in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, 700 miles east of where he disappeared. He had no memory of where he'd been for over a year, or how he'd managed to end up so far away from home. His last memory was of reaching Lake Michigan. Kubatsky refused to discuss his situation after his initial rescue, and to this day remains silent about the event, which is understandable. Nobody likes reliving the time they entered a Belushi trance and wandered halfway across the country. He may have started a second family somewhere, or worse, he may have started a band. For whatever reason, Michigan experiences an abnormally high number of UFO sightings compared to other states. Some residents think the Lake Michigan Triangle is to blame. According to WOOD-TV, based out of West Michigan, police have been fielding complaints about UFOs over the Lake Michigan Triangle since 1913. In 1990, the New York Times reported on two colossal balls of fire seen falling into the Great Lake. The Sausalito News in California noted that the impact was heard as far away as Indiana. The New York Times called the objects meteors, but other eyewitnesses claimed they were metaphysical forces wreaking havoc. Although, considering the Lake Michigan Triangle's history and reputation, they could have been aliens falling over. On March 8, 1994, hundreds of Michigan residents along Lake Michigan reported seeing disc-like objects hovering over them, some with flashing lights. Among the witnesses was a local National Weather Service radar operator who told police, "I've never seen anything like this, not even when I'm doing storms. These aren't storms. Spooky. Makes you wonder how many boats Fox Mulder must have lost in Lake Michigan."
Mulder.
Archaeology professor Mark Hawley and his colleague Brian Abbott discovered a circular stone arrangement in 40 feet of water while using sonar technology to search for shipwrecks in the Lake Michigan Triangle in 2007. Along the periphery of the rocks, Hawley and Abbott also found a boulder marked with a prehistoric carving of the long and stately mastodon, suggesting that the formation could be several thousand years old. Some think the Stonehenge-like arrangement served a ceremonial purpose, while others believe it was built to dam up the lake in order to make fishing easier. Research into the rock formations remains ongoing, and in order to respect indigenous groups whose ancestors may have erected Lake Michigan's underwater Stonehenge, the exact location of the structures is being kept secret. Although if every horror movie ever made is any indication, they should probably just leave those rocks alone. So what do you think? What's behind the mystery of the Lake Michigan Triangle? Tell us your theories in the comments.
Please remember to pray. My darlings, do no harm. Take no crime. And I will catch you on the next one. Get some sleep.